Hey, what's up, guys? It's Q and A time, Monday, February 19th, 2018. I tried to start this like 3 times now and kept getting interrupted. I got a phone call, I had a meowing cat, and a barking dog, and all that good stuff. So if I get interrupted again, we're just going to keep going. But anyhow, today I did topic related. So I said anything related to the psych side of things. So it could be strength athletes, powerlifters, bodybuilders, whatever. There are some overlapping things between all the arenas, though. I mean, there are some things that are going to be a little more specific to certain areas than others. So, yeah, anything. Disordered eating, destructive behaviors, body dysmorphic, thought patterns, motivations, stuff like that. So I haven't really looked. I glanced over the questions. I haven't looked at all of them. So I'm really shooting off the hip. Like most weeks, I don't really look at the questions that much. I mean, I glance them. So this ought to be interesting, but there are some good ones. So let's see what we have. All right. First one. What would you say are 1 to 2 traits of clients that you see keeps them from falling off? I'm not saying a day or a week, but what does it take to be on more often than not? All right, so I would say off the top of my head, 2 things. One, patience. With patience comes being realistic, being realistic of your goals, knowing that it might take time, might take more time from you than somebody else, might take less. It's hard, really just depends, obviously. But that's probably number one. Being patient, I mean, that can mean a lot of things. There's a lot of ways that you can be patient, a lot of situations you can be patient in. Patient, not complacent. That's how I like to say it. And then, secondly, would be understanding. I should say that, and not understanding as in the patient things kind of comes with understanding. Obviously I understand that it's going to take time. But sorry, excuse me. Being understanding of what's actually going on. And you don't have to know everything. I mean, a lot of people work with coaches, or whatever. You don't have to know everything that's going on. You don't need to know every minute detail, every single scientific, every biological process that's going on. Like you don't need to know all of that. It's just not necessary. But having a basic understanding of your course of action is good. So that way, if you're, let's say, understanding that progress comes in different forms. So maybe you're in a health phase. Maybe there was some health things going on that you need to fix and you need to address. In that case, you might not be making physical progress at the time, like visually, but hey, I understand that this is part of the process. I'm still making progress. So I think understanding is good. Or I understand that, I really need to push it right now. Like I'm primed, I'm ready to go, I'm ready to rock, whatever, do it. So understanding just the certain parts of the process that are going on, at least to a basic extent, so you know what's happening. All right. All right. So best steps when trying to overcome body image issues like body shaming. So body dysmorphia, this is pretty common. It's pretty common in especially in the physique side of things, bodybuilding. So, couple things here, at least in my experience, would be not comparing yourself. That's a big one. I think that goes for most people, though, in just all aspects of life. I think comparison can be good and bad. For somebody that has body shaming issues or body dysmorphia, something like that, usually comparisons are bad. Typically, that might be why they have the issues in the first place, to be completely honest. But beyond that, understanding that you have an issue. I mean, that's a big thing. it's easier. I think it's a little bit easier to understand you have an issue if you have an eating disorder. There's still denial phase. You're still going to go through that where you realize until, hey, this gets out of hand. But with the body shaming, there's nothing physically happening. Like there's not an event necessarily that happens. It's more within yourself and within your mind. So it's a little more difficult to identify and come to terms with and be realistic with yourself and honest with yourself about. So once you come to terms with it and you realize, hey, yeah, this is going on and I need to fix it, it's certainly going to make the process a lot easier. Beyond that point, you need to understand why you need to look a certain way. So, hey, do you need to put on a little bit more body fat for health reasons? Maybe that's it. That's a common thing, chances are you probably still look really good. So understanding, hey, why do I need to gain this little bit extra weight? Why do I need to eat this extra food? What is it going to do for me? What is it going to do for me physically? And what I tell people a lot of time is they're worried about a common one would be females, for example. They have a lot of issues with this and issues with, and males do too, don't get me wrong, but it's normally the opposite end of the spectrum. Issues with weight, body fat gain, and, weight and body fat gain normally. But what I like to tell them is, all right, so if we don't do this now for your health, then your body will deteriorate. Your body will slowly deteriorate, and you're going to continue to look worse, and you're going to be in such a deep hole that you're not going to be able to dig yourself out of it, in which case you're going to look a lot worse, and you are going to have a long path to recovery, in which case you will continue to look worse and before you look better. Instead of taking small steps to create a more sustainable environment, I sell it that way a lot of time, and it's not like I have to sell it. I mean, that's the truth. That's how it works. But it's getting past right now and looking at, okay, I know this person wants to maintain a good physique and good body fat, but you have to get them to understand that, hey, this is what you need to do to be able to do that long term, not just right now in this moment. All right. Next one. Maybe if I find my mouse. There's a lot of them here, so I'm not sure if I'll answer everyone, but I'm going to try. Have you ever worked with any clients who come from eating disorder background? ED assumes eating disorder, not erectile dysfunction. Oh, could be wrong. Erectile, fuck. Eating disorder background and very overweight or underweight. If you did, how did you help them manage their mindset, improve their relationship with food, and help progress in and out of the weight room? Did you have them see professional help, help with their decisions with food, or did you do it yourself? If so, what steps did you take? Okay, so this is a very individual process. I've absolutely worked with people with eating disorders. My disclaimer on all of these questions, especially something like this, is I'm not a clinical psychologist. I don't have a degree in psychology. I did minor in psychology in school. That doesn't make me a clinical psychologist, no matter how much experience I have. So keep that in mind. If they get to a really destructive place that I'm very concerned about them, then I absolutely have them see a professional, because it's a liability, and and they need that help. And then I kind of work hand in hand with that, with that professional or with them and what information they learned, and we can try to integrate everything. So let's see. I'm trying to think, just some really basic stuff. Kind of goes back to the body shaming thing, is getting them to understand this is what needs to be done long term to maintain your situation, because now you're at a point where you have an eating disorder and you're slowly deteriorating, so you are going to get worse. And if you get worse, you're going to look worse. Your health is going to get worse. Your, all those things are going to get worse, and then, essentially your mindset's going to get worse. And so is your eating disorder. And I just kind of show them that this is the rabbit hole that you're going down, and you need to realize that, hey, this is what we need to do long term. A lot of the time, if I can drill that home enough, we can start making small steps in the right direction rather than just saying, you need to do this right now. This is what you got to do right now. Well, because that doesn't work, because then all they're doing is looking at right now and they don't have any understanding of the future. So once I get that established, then I can start taking steps. Maybe it's with their relationship with food. I mean, that varies a ton depending on the disorder. It could be, overanalysis. Maybe they don't do good with a set meal plan. They need to learn macros. Maybe they don't do good with macros. It gives them too much freedom, and they want to tighten things down a little bit, at least for a little while they get things stable. Maybe they, so it could be either end of it. Maybe it's somewhere in between. Maybe they need to cut out trigger foods out of their diet. Maybe they need to, at least for a while, maybe they need to add more foods in their diet because they're too restrictive. Maybe there's a lot of environmental things that are going on. This is another one too, maybe they have a lot of stress. Maybe they have hormonal imbalances. Maybe they have chemical imbalances, neurotransmitters, serotonin, dopamine, GABA. They have problems sleeping. They have anxiety attacks. They have all this stuff. So a lot of those things need to be addressed. First, you have to create the right environment and a stable chemical and hormonal environment so you can correct the steps. That way, when they see food and they eat food and all those things, that it works correctly in their body and they're not having the wrong reaction to it, and they're not wanting to binge, and they're not wanting to do all these things simply because they're having an adverse reaction. So at least now, hey, everything's stable. Now I need to brain train. So those would be some places I would start. That is a very individual question, depending on what their eating disorder is. If it's anorexia or if it's bulimia or if it's binge eating, I mean, all those, the treatments are going to vary a lot. And any psychologist or person that works with those things would probably tell you the same thing. So let's see. How do you deal with clients that have obsessions with their physique goals? The types that will stress and worry about the minutia of their programming. All right. So I know what this person's talking about, and this is a pretty bad situation. I mean, it's very extreme. This is leaning more towards obsessive compulsive behaviors and not necessarily eating disorders or those other things I was talking about. So with OCD, obviously identifying you have a problem. That's number one. That's always number one. Looking at what negative effects is this having on me. And what I like to tell people a lot of time with these obsessive behaviors or OCDs, there are a lot of good things that can come out of that. I mean, there are a lot of positives for that kind of work ethic and detail and what have you, but there are a lot of negatives too if you don't know how to channel it. So really what you're doing is you're refocusing it to something that's more productive and not deleterious to your health and your results and all those things. So unfortunately, a lot of time it might come to a breaking point, but I mean, if you are noticing it, like at least personally, when I see these types of behaviors in clients, they normally have some kind of underlying issue going on. It was already there. So I kind of go back and I might ask them some other questions about how do these behaviors tie into other things that they're doing. Maybe they have these OCD tendencies towards other things in their life. And OCD doesn't necessarily mean, I'm germaphobe and I have to wipe my doorknobs down. That's not really what we're talking about. I guess that'd be more of a phobia, but hey, shh, quiet. Come here. Come here. Say hi. But there are there are different segments and different types of OCD. So I was going to tell a little personal story here. I won't go super into it because this video is already getting long, but I'll just give you a little bit of background. I was diagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorder, and I was a teenager at the time though, because they diagnosed me with depression. It's kind of a blanket diagnosis, depression. Like a lot of people have depression. Mine was just a little bit different because I was 8 years old when they diagnosed me with depression. It's like, how does an 8-year-old have depression? But, I had all the signs and symptoms, and chemically, I assumed chemically I had something going on. So with that said, they put me on depression medication, which is stupid, 8 years old. I don't like SSRIs and a lot of those drugs anyhow, but obviously for an 8-year-old, that's even worse. So I was on them on and off for years, blah, blah, blah. Let me let this cat out. Come on, bud. You're going outside, pal. All right. So, anyhow, later on, I won't go through all the gruesome details, but later on, my diagnosis turned more into, as my personality and my maturity and all that stuff evolved, it turned more into obsessive compulsive disorder. I got to a point where I actually didn't leave my house for almost a year. I know some people know this story. Didn't leave my house for almost a year other than to go to the gym or the grocery store, which I worked at the gym. So, really I was going to work and then train and then go home. And I mean nowhere. I didn't go anywhere. I'm trying to think. I didn't visit my parents. I didn't visit any friends. I didn't go anywhere. Not even a different grocery store. So, it got to the point where my thing was efficiency. That was my thing. I didn't want to waste any time. And I'm still kind of like that, though I've channeled it a lot better. I got to the point where I would have, like, for example, I use this little situation, this story. I would have a basket of laundry, I folded clothes. I need to take them to my room. Well, I wouldn't take them to my room until I had to go to my room for something else, because it was a waste of time for me to make 2 trips, right? So they could sit there for hours. And I would do that with other things too. Like I would do it in the store too. Like I'd sit there in my list and I'd have it all mapped out where I was, going through the aisles of the store. And I know there's other people that probably do that too, but I was literally, so I could get to the store the fastest way possible. But I was literally doing that with everything in my life. I got to the point where I was like mapping minutes and stuff during the day, and it was just crazy. It ruined me pretty bad. Like I don't know if a lot of people knew it, because I still posted online, I was still bodybuilding. I mean, it's still doing everything, doing my logs on forums and blah, blah, blah. And I still was doing my online schooling and yada, yada, yada. I was miserable. I was used to being miserable for, 12, 14 years, whatever, 15 years. So I didn't really think much of it, but that was kind of my breaking point where eventually it just got really out of hand. I won't go into all the real gruesome details of some of the really bad situations, but that's kind of the OCD thing. That's not like, oh, I weigh my food, I'm OCD. No. This is like, this runs my life every second of my life. Not, oh, it determines where I go out to eat or if I can even go out to eat with my friends. No, this is like, this determines if I can even get up and go to the bathroom, because it's on the other side of the house and it's a waste of time because I'm doing something else and I have to go back to that side of the house anyhow later. So I'm just going to sit here and try not to piss myself until it's time to go to that side of the house. So that's kind of the extreme stuff. That's just an example. I mean, there are a lot of types of OCD, but with this person in particular, identifying the issue. Sorry, I got off track there, but you guys might appreciate that. Identifying the issue, that's always the biggest part. And backtracking the issue, retraining the brain. Journaling is good. If you have specific stuff that bothers you, journal it. Write down, okay, this happened, this bothers me, why? Now, if I have a client like that, I ask them like, well, why are you, do you have these other behaviors outside the gym? I kind of subtly talk about that stuff, and normally they do. But if not, I tell them, hey, this is what I need in my updates. Please bullet point this. I really don't, we don't need to talk about this and this and this. And I know it sounds like, oh, you're copping out as a coach to do less work, but really what I'll tell them is, hey, we're actually making this update process a lot more difficult, and I'm able to do a lot less better job as a coach because there's just too many things in here that I don't need. I don't need to know about, this and this and this and this and this. And you have to be honest. You have to. I've tried it other ways, and somebody that has that type of OCD and that type of obsessiveness, it's just not going to work any other way. You're going to have to tell them. And I can only hope that it opens their eyes to what's actually going on. And like I said, if they do have some other underlying issue, I try to have them seek help of a professional. Other than I will give them steps and stuff. There's some books and stuff if you want that I can send you to, but you have to tell them. You got to be honest. You're gonna have to, because I know the situation. Like I said, you just need to tell them straight up. And if they can't do it, and if they're not willing to at least try to do it, cut back, then you know that, hey man, they really probably have something going on here and they need help. And this lifestyle is just hurting them worse. Unfortunately. So it's a hard thing to balance. Like OCD is awesome for bodybuilding, right? Well, of course it is, but then again, it's also really freaking terrible if you don't know how to control it and use it. Okay, I won't go into that one anymore, but there's a couple more. This is kind of a repeat question, food relationships. Common signs of disordered eating. This is a hard one because you can't always tell, but I mean, there are some things you can see. Obviously, if you're doing something to their plan and nothing's ever working, then maybe they're not adhering, or you just don't know what you're doing. But look on social media as I talked about this with somebody else. It's kind of a funny thing. Like I notice after shows a lot, or after someone goes through a big weight loss phase or a big cutting phase, they start posting all these food pictures, or maybe they start doing it before the show was over. Okay, I'm gonna have this and this after the show, right? A lot of people do that, right? So, but it doesn't stop, and then they joke, man, my free meal turned into this, and I ate blah 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 blah, and they joke, and you notice these continued jokes. Really, what those are most of the time is that's them venting that I really don't have control right now. Like, I didn't plan to eat all of that in my free meal, and I'm gaining a lot of body fat, and I don't really like it. That was my, haha, I'm going to turn this into a joke, even though I really didn't have control. Like, that was a binge, and I felt very out of control and insecure. Yeah, so I see that a lot, and I just subtly bring it up. Hey, it's you doing all right? Like, how was that meal the other night? Like, did you eat too much? Are you feeling a little, like, did it get out a little out of hand on you? Like you lost control? So kind of go over those things. And then that's a big one that I see, honestly. And then if you're a coach, obviously you're seeing their weight, you're seeing their body, you're seeing huge fluxes in water and stuff like that, and just changes in mood, guiltiness, all that stuff. You can ask about those things. They're hard questions to ask sometimes, but you have to ask them. It's some other common signs. Honestly, those are probably the main things that I see. The social media thing's a big one. Funny enough, that happens quite a bit. And then the just looking at the updates and stuff like that, I can normally pick out pick out the behaviors. It's been a long day, guys. Sorry. Trying to think of some other stuff. Ask questions. I mean, you have to ask questions if you suspect anything. But you'd be surprised how much social media reveals. It's alarming if you know what you're looking for. Another question: Do you like today's social media? Do you think today's social media presence slows individuals down for progress at times? Desire of maintaining a certain condition year-round, overlapping in potential progress. Yes, for sure. But I think that also translates into other things too. I don't think it's just wanting to stay shredded all the time. I think it's just social media opens up this whole platform for people to compare themselves to others, and that's where the issue lies. That's the bottom line. It gives you a basis to compare yourselves to all kinds of people that are different than you, doing different things than you. You don't necessarily know. You don't necessarily know all the context of their situation. You don't know. You don't know what their plan is necessarily. You don't know what's actually going on behind the scenes. They ate this food and that food, and they think, and they're still staying lean, when really maybe they didn't even eat it. For one, maybe they're having that one meal in the whole week, and they portray it as that's what they're eating all the time. Probably not. Maybe they have binge eating. Maybe that's just their binge, and they starve the rest of the time. You don't know. I mean, I've seen stuff like that. Social media is so skewed and warped that people have these false perceptions of what's actually going on, when really behind the scenes, the glamour is much less than it seems. But yeah, like I said, just social media opens up a platform for people to compare themselves, and that's really the problem. That's really the main problem at the end of the day. Once you get past that, I think you do better off. I was talking to someone a little bit ago today, actually, and I said that I follow less and less stuff on social media that every year, it seems like, because I just don't compare myself to anyone. I try not to, and this helps me do it. Follow some people you find they're useful, non-biased, and not feeding you full of bullshit, not using sensationalist type stuff on their social media. If they're using sensationalism and it's just over the top, or they're gimmicky, or they're trying to get your attention or make it seem so great and grand and things like that, that's cool to have excitement and stuff, but that's not necessarily the people that you want to follow, because you don't know how much of that's truth, how much of that's marketing, how much of that is going to suck you in and give you false perception and false promise and stuff like that. I'm not saying follow boring people, but I mean follow people that are level-headed, consistent with their information, not giving, that are, like I said, level-headed would probably be the word for it. Like I said, just giving good solid information consistently. I don't sound like I'm talking about myself, and are not using that sensationalist type of approach, because those are the people that they will get you hyped up. You realize, hey, this probably isn't going to work for me, and then you get dropped on your head. Same thing goes for the conditioning. Like I said, seeing these people that post these pictures, I mean, hell, for that matter, they could have taken all these pictures around their last prep and posted them all year long. I've worked with a couple people that have huge social media presences, and they do that. That is exactly what they do. They don't look anything like that all year, because I work with them. I know what their off seasons look like and what their contest prep looks like and their photo shoots, because I did the prep, and then they just post stuff all year long. Post a quote with it, post a whatever, post an informational. Maybe they even post a pretty solid post with it, like something that has good information. And you're like, oh man, this seems legit, right? Well, yeah, but they were peeled for the last, 3 years straight. Do you think maybe something's a little off? There are people like that, but it's far and few between. So yeah, I do think social media opens up a whole can of worms and gives people a platform to compare way too much. And really, some people just need to take it with a grain of salt and pick through it for the good stuff, because there's a lot of good stuff. I tell people, use social media. It's awesome, but just use it correctly. So that's 30 minutes, guys. I need to go do cardio, and I'm talking so much that my heart rate's up and I'm getting out of breath. As you can see, I've yawned like 4 times. But let me go through. I think I got them all. I know that was kind of general, but I hope there was at least some decent insights in there to help with just getting the gears turning. A lot of these situations are individual, very individual, I should say. But those are just some common trends that I see and some things that will probably help you guys out. And I hope that they do. So I will talk to you guys next week.